What is going on, everybody? It's your boy Gsluke here with our round 4 live stream. Hopefully, everyone having a great start to your weekend. They've got UFC on right now, a little bit of a break from sports like NBA. Hockey's getting towards the end of the year, so golf is in its spotlight finally. We've got the full swing going on, Tiger Woods in the field, so a lot of new people going out there looking for golf content. So if you're one of those new faces, first off, welcome to the live stream. But we're going to get you prepared for everything that you need to know for tomorrow, whether it's for DFS on the Showdown side, the single round slate, or on the prop side. If you're playing over there on Prize Picks or Underdog, this stream is going to have all the information that you need. So I can see a few of you already down there in chat. You love to see it. What's going on, GameCube, here about an hour early. So definitely the first in attendance. Love to see it. Hopefully you're having a great Saturday evening. What's going on, Jonathan? Jonathan thinks that Rom is going to hold on for the W, and I can see that the chat is already split down there with the big guy up top. Figsta pointing out that Rom hasn't gained strokes putting on round 4 this year. So definitely going to be contentious. We'll cover all of that and more later on. But yeah, just welcome in, everybody. What's going on, Steven? What's going on, Antonio? We're sipping on a little Crown and Coke. We've made that our drink of the stream, like the last 3-4 streams that we've done here. And we're running it back, right? Saturday evening. Got a little bit of a late start going on as I wanted to get through all of my projections before cracking the seal on the ALK. But hey, hopefully everyone's having a great evening. And let's get this thing rocking. So I'm going to make this as streamlined as humanly possible. Not going to dilly-dally whatsoever. So if you have any questions, make sure to get them in now. So in terms of your golf course, you're looking at what we expected, which was easier conditions for Saturday. Not only was the weather conducive for low scores, you had pretty much no wind the entire day. But when you took a look at the pin locations, something that we really focused on stream, they were a lot simpler. Hole 10 was a lot more gettable, was closer to a 50% birdie rate today because of that front left pin location. Hole 17 played a lot shorter. You saw more people get there in 2. And a few other pin locations like hole 6 was in a bowl. Hole number, I believe it was like 15 was also in a bowl. Just a lot of birdies to be had. And that was also reflected in the stats. You went from right around a 3.1 birdie or better average to closer to 3.7 today. So a lot of that was reflected. And of course, with the scoring where it went from slightly over par to under par here on Saturday. But unfortunately for these players, they're going to get a completely different set of conditions for Sunday. And at this point, we didn't have the pin locations posted. So I'm going to go ahead, refresh the page here, see if they posted them. They haven't yet. Riviera, the Genesis, is known for having some of the most brutal conditions there on Sunday. So the easy gettable pins that players had today are going to be thrown out the window. I mean, you even heard the tour officials there on Thursday morning talk about how they can kind of spice it up over the weekend. And we didn't see that today. So we know that there's only one day left for them to spice up the golf course. And considering that Jon Rahm has a 3-shot lead, I mean, second place, Homa and Mitchell are separated from a good portion of the field. I would expect the tour staff to test those top end players, right? They're not going to hand Jon Rahm the trophy tomorrow. They're going to make him go out there, earn par in almost every single hole. And typically when we see this, you get like a US Open type of situation, right? Where somebody like JT can roar up the leaderboard and steal the championship. So I think the number of contenders for that are certainly a lot smaller than what we had for the PGA, just because of how far ahead Jon Rahm is of most of the field. I mean, he's 8 shots ahead of Morikawa, right? Like, I don't know. Morikawa, if he had the best round of his life, and if Jon Rahm really comes back to the field, maybe he could end up winning the golf tournament. But more realistically, it's like Cantlay and Homa, right? Maybe Keith Mitchell, again, if he goes out there and has a career day, can go out there and run them down. But it's certainly possible. So you can see over here, Jon Rahm's at a 74% win rate. Absolutely ridiculous. And I think that might be a little bit high. I just want to say that, right? He should be minus money to win this event. He has more than a 50% chance of winning. I agree with that. But 75% seems a little bit too high. We'll just put it at that point. I think it'd probably be close to like 65%. And I think that's a little bit more adequate. So when we get into the strategy section a little bit later on, we'll talk about ownership. Of course, Jon Rahm's going to be by far the highest owned player. But even if he goes out there and wins tomorrow, he could be far from the optimal play. especially considering how some of the scoring works for Sunday. Those 12 placement points for first place are going to matter. But if he ends up shooting like 1-2 under par and still winning it at 16, 17 under, which is more than possible tomorrow, given the kind of cushion that he has, that might not crack the optimal GPP lineup. So there's a lot of things to consider. We'll talk about that when we get to the player pool. But in terms of weather, there's not that much that's going to throw us a wrench here on Sunday. It looks like the winds might be slightly higher towards the afternoon wave. And go over here to Wind Finder. Oh, sorry, I should say Willy Weather. They also have it kind of kicking up towards the latter half of the day. In the morning, you can see it's between 3 to 4 miles an hour, so essentially not a breath of wind. And then in the afternoon to late afternoon, it gets towards like 6-7 miles an hour. So it's, small margins to say the least, something that would be hard to really act on, especially considering that the guys towards, the latter half of tee times are either the guys that are towards the, top of the leaderboard, right? Your cream of the crop options, or they're players that are way behind the 8 ball, right? That are towards the last place. So it's not really giving us a huge edge weather-wise to act on here. But just wanted to point it out, right? Always worth checking. Tomorrow morning, if you're waking up before the slate locks, maybe just check the weather, right? Bring up Wind Finder, bring up Willy Weather, the Windy app. There's a bunch of different sites you can use, and just make sure nothing's changed, right? If last second you're seeing that the winds are going to be super high in the afternoon, then maybe you do take the players that are going off early. And just to give you guys an idea, they do have it as split tees. So you're going to have 3 players going off of holes number 10 and number 1, which means essentially the guys that are in the middle of the pack, the guys that are, in this case, I believe like -2, -3 on the leaderboard, are going to be teeing off first. And that means towards the end of the day, kind of like I was just saying, the guys that are either in first or last place are going to be the guys going off last. If we wake up tomorrow and we have even windier conditions maybe in the afternoon than they're calling for right now, then maybe you take the guys that are going off early, right? The guys that are there at -2, -4, hope that they get the perfect conditions. They're going to have more receptive greens in the morning, more pristine greens because no one's trampled on them throughout the day, and try and find an edge that way. But I would kind of push back on that. Again, we're not expecting the winds to kick up, but just want to throw it out there, right, as the hypothetical situation. Let's hop over to the projection sheet. And first, just really want to touch on the overall general strategy. Before we hop into questions, get into the weeds about specific players, just want to go over round 4 Showdown. So if you're one of those new faces that hasn't been here for quite some time, I will say that we're going to go over DFS first and then hop into props. So if you have questions about the prize picks or underdog board, just sit tight. We're going to go through this rather quickly this time. Like I said, a little bit more streamlined for the round 4 stream here. I'm going to go through this in about 15 minutes. But in general, when we're looking at a showdown for round 4, a few things that are different. First off, there are placement points involved. So if you've, maybe joined in, started to play golf DFS this week, you played rounds 1 through 3 Showdown, you don't get placement points, right? It's all about just your birdie production there on Thursday through Saturday. But for Sunday Showdown, you get 12 points for first place. It drops off rather quickly, I believe, to like 7.5, 8 points for second place, down to like 4.5, 5 points for third, fourth, so on and so forth, to like half a point to 1 point to the guys that are finishing between like 30th to 40th on the leaderboard. And up top, right, those 12 points matter, right? Those 8 points for second, even some of like the 4.5, 5 point boosts that you get can make a difference in large field GPPs. And people will play the guys at the top because of that, right? They'll see, their lineup starts with, let's say, like 25, 30 fantasy points because you took all the guys at the top of the board. A lot of the casuals or people that maybe don't do as much research when it comes to playing PGA DFS, they love jamming in those players. So a guy like a Jon Rahm, who in a vacuum would be an excellent play for tomorrow, right? We know that he's striking the ball. He's probably the world's best player. I mean, at least as of the recent form over the last few weeks, he's much better than Rory McIlroy. He would be a fantastic play, right? If he was averagely owned across the board, if he was, pretty much getting the same amount of attention as everyone else, we'd be locking in Jon Rahm, especially considering that he's getting those placement points, right? He's starting in first place. He has a 75% chance of winning at getting those 12 points. You would seem like a fool not to play him, right? Except that everyone knows that, right? People aren't dumb. They understand, or at least most of the people understand, that placement points are a part of the picture on Sunday. So they're going to jam in Jon Rahm. Jon Rahm, by far your highest owned player, right? Over 40% ownership here on this slate. Now, you can see the right 3 columns are blacked out. Those are on my Patreon page, right? I can't give away the goods that I'm giving to my Patreon people, or else they wouldn't be worth anything, right? If everyone knew who I was playing. But we'll talk through some of the more notable ownership numbers to give you an idea. But Jon Rahm, 40% owned plus. So if you're going to take Jon Rahm, you almost have to lock him tomorrow to get any sort of leverage to the field, which I think is a viable play. If you want to go out there, take that 75% chance that he wins, by all means do so. But him winning isn't enough alone to make him that optimal play. I just want to make this as extremely clear as humanly possible. Like I said before, he could shoot 2, maybe even 3 under par, win this golf tournament by 2 shots, and not crack the optimal. Because scoring for Showdown is heavily, or it's not even heavily, it's all dependent on your actual birdie production, particularly at an event where you can see rounds of 5, 6 under par. Now, for their US Open, where maybe the ceiling is 1, 2 under par, those 12 placement points might mean a whole lot more. But even at the Genesis, at a tough track like this, I mean, you saw what Jon Rahm shot 7 under par day 1, right? Max Homa went absolutely nuclear there on Thursday as well. You're going to see a few players. I mean, today, Denny McCarthy, right? 7 under par. Tiger Woods was 5 under par at one point. Those kind of performances are worth a whole lot more than those placement points, because just 2 birdies add up to pretty much the entire placement points that you're getting for first place. So 2 birdies are worth the win here, right? So even a Xander Schauffele, I think this is the perfect example here, right? Who's starting at the bottom of the board, right? Even par, worst placement of anybody towards the top end of the pricing here. If he goes out there and he makes 7 birdies, let's say keeps bogey off the card for the most part, right? Shoots someone like maybe 5, 6 under par, I can guarantee you he'll be in the optimal. Those placement points up top that you're getting for Jon Rahm, the only way that he ends up outscoring a Xander Schauffele is if he's making 5, 6 birdies of his own, which again is possible, right? That's why Jon Rahm is still a decent play. But you've got to ask yourself, is he worth being owned in half your lineups? Or to get leverage to the field, is it worth locking him, using him in every single lineup, right? Are you damn sure he's going to go out there and make those 5, 6 birdies? Because kind of like a few people pointed out before, right? Figstud, just want to give you your due credit here. Jon Rahm hasn't gained on the greens in round 4 this year, right? He's gone out to huge leads. Anytime he's been there in contention on Sunday, he's faded, right? Just think of last week at the Phoenix Open. In the past, I mean, we've seen the opposite. We've seen him have pretty decent weeks with the flat stick. But you've got to ask yourself whether it's worth playing him or not. And I can't answer that for you, right? I can tell you that I'm not playing Jon Rahm. I'm taking chances on pretty much everyone else on the board, just because the placement points might not end up mattering, right? One of these guys like Rory McIlroy might shoot a 63, a 64. Scotty Scheffler, right? More than capable of going absolutely nuclear here on Sunday. Could shoot something like 6 strategy-wise. All the ownership is going to be favored towards the guys that are like a Jon Rahm at 15 under, a Max Homa at 12 under, a Patrick Cantlay at 10 under par, right? The ownership is going to be so much more heavy on those players than everybody else that from the game theory perspective, at least if you're in a large field contest, right? You're trying to take down a contest where it's like 10, 15, sometimes even like 20, 25% the first place. You have to have that go big or go home mindset. And for me here in Sunday Showdown, it's taking these kind of pivots. So we'll talk about a few key candidates for that. Definitely a few guys up top that I'm favoring there. But let's catch up on chat now that I did my spiel on strategy. Let's see what's going on. What's going on, Ace? He says, yo, is Rahm unbeatable to you as well? Unbearable, sorry. Misread that there. Unbeatable? Maybe, right? There's the Freudian slip. The guy is ridiculous out there. But is he unbearable? Yeah, he's got that smug little attitude to him. There's times where I really empathize. I like the fact that he's as competitive as he is, but I think he takes it a bit far, right? His fan interaction isn't the best. Not the best for the sport. I mean, the death glares that he gives people are just enough to make even the toughest guys cringe a little bit. Yeah, he's got his gripes, but hell of a player, that's for damn sure. Good call on Hodges today. Yeah, you couldn't play him after those first 2 rounds. I'm going right back to him, though. That's for damn sure. Very disappointing round from Rory. He's putting like Luke List. Yeah, I still think that he hasn't made a putt for birdie outside of 10 feet. That stat, I checked it, held up there for the last 9 there on Friday's round. And today I can tell you that he didn't make a putt over 10 feet for birdie too. So something's going on there. That's all I can say. We're staying posted on pin locations and waiting on Underdog to drop some props. Thank you so much. See, Damon, you're the real MVP. You know the struggle, right? I mean, we talk on Discord all the time, man, about when the shit's dropping and whatnot. You're the real MVP. Cheers to you, man. I appreciate you. That's what I'll say. Jason says, yes, AC's gotten better since he's had a child, but sort of still a butthole. Yeah, I guess, yeah, having a kid, it's got to change you a little bit, right? It's got to make you a little bit less of a douchebag because you're dealing with the kid at home, maybe gives you some perspective. But yeah, hopefully he gets it together. He's got a long career ahead of him, right? He's going to change a lot, I would imagine. Blitz says there might be a little edge taking one or two of the guys from 26th to 33rd. Yeah, I was looking at that too. Normally, you always want to take a look at guys in the morning, anyways. Weather-wise, I don't see a ton of gusts in the afternoon, at least on Willy Weather, Windfinder, AccuWeather. It's all within like 2-3 miles an hour. There's not anything really out there. But I'm going to wake up early tomorrow morning. I'm going to obviously put out a little weather post to the people over there on Discord. Let them know if there is that weather edge. So I don't imagine there's going to be, at least based on what I'm looking at right now. Maybe there's a weather report out there I'm not seeing that's calling for higher wind gusts in the afternoon. But yeah, it's always something worth considering, right? Especially because the guys that are in like 26th to 33rd place aren't in a bad spot to move up that leaderboard, right? They shoot 5-6 under par. That's a top 10 finish right there. So I think with or even without this wind edge that could be there, that's a decent strategy to take because they're getting the more receptive greens and they're also getting the more pristine greens. So there's going to be a slight little edge there anyways, let alone if you end up getting the wind edge too. So I like it. Goat is muted / choppy. So you're saying that about Tiger Woods? He had a heck of a day today. It was pretty sweet. Are you saying the stream is choppy? Okay. Close out and open up again. Yeah, so I think it might be on your end. Unless anybody else out there is having issues, let me know. Usually that's the case with YouTube. It's usually based on just your connection there. Raja says, Luke List plus 0.06 shots gained putting today. That's a miracle for Luke List. That doesn't happen very often. It's probably why he had the round that he did too, right? Played pretty decently, made a bunch of birdies, was playing alongside Justin Thomas out there. Good for him. He putts okay every once in a while on POA. The stats bear that out. That's how he ended up winning the Farmers last year. I love to see it. That's cool. Underdog props just dropped. Sweet. It's just strokes. So yeah, over the next like 5 minutes, they'll probably drop the other categories. So that's good to know. Dropped bogeys and birdies too. Sweet. You're giving me the timestamps. Absolutely love it, man. Froze for like 10 seconds, but now it's fine. Maybe it's the internet connection. My cats might be pulling on the Ethernet cable over there. They love to use it as a toy when they get a little bit bored. Who knows, right? Fucking Comcast is not the best when it comes to being an ISP. That's for damn sure. GameCube says, I was like, wait a minute, you're on West Coast. Yeah, we should be good. All right, so let's get into this strategy again. If you have any questions, feel free to go ahead and throw them down in chat. Let's go ahead and go over this 9K range and some of the sleepers up top. So Rory McIlroy, I know he had the horrible day putting. He's more than capable of going out there and gaining, right? I think that he could use a putter change. I think getting him just a new flat stick could literally do it for him because he's hitting the putts seemingly where he wants to and nothing's dropping. So it could be an eye line issue. The putter could be bent. I mean, we've seen a lot of wild shit happen. I mean, Keith Mitchell, right, was putting with the bent putter, ended up losing like 7 strokes putting one week, changed it up, nearly won the next week. Who knows? Either way, for Sunday, I'm taking a shot on Rory McIlroy here because he's about 4 times lower owned than a Jon Rahm and about 3 times lower owned than a Max Homa. You'd say the same thing for Scotty Scheffler, who's another sneaky pick up top that I'll be taking for tomorrow at $10,200. If you can tell me that I could play these two and stack up this 9K range with guys that I think have a legit shot to move up the leaderboard tomorrow, and all I have to do is fade Max Homa and Jon Rahm, and I can get leverage to like all of these players, then count me in, right? Rather than taking 2 players up top and essentially having to almost lock them into every lineup to get leverage, I can play like 5-6 guys, maybe even 7 players up top. I get leverage to all of them as a result. So again, don't get married to those placement points. They matter, but they only matter so much where like ownership can just overweigh it, right? Like if ownership gets to 35-40%, like what you have on a Jon Rahm and a Max Homa, then you really strongly have to consider the fade. And I'm going to bring up my actual ownership on these guys just to give you the exact numbers. On John Rahm, I have 40.1% ownership. And on, let's see, Max Homa's ownership here. Max Homa, I have 29.3% ownership. Cantlay's in the 20% range. Guys like Will Zalatoris are like 21% owned. Keith Mitchell's like 24% owned. Whereas like Rory's 12%, Scotty's right about 10% owned. Xander's 5% owned. JT is right about 11% owned. There are a lot of pivots to be had, and it's not like you're getting like, maybe 20% less ownership, right? Where it's like 15 versus like 12%. You're getting legitimately 3-4 times less ownership. Sometimes like 9x less ownership, like you're getting with the Xander Schauffele there. So those are all plays that I'm considering. In this 9-8K range, you can scatter shot as well, right? There's actually a few more chalky players that I'm taking here. So up top with Rahm, with Max Homa, it's more just a bet that they don't go nuclear, right? They're not shooting 5 under par and winning the golf tournament, is essentially what I'm hoping tomorrow. Both of them could win. Both of them could finish in runner-up position, whatever the case may be. Just don't go out there and have the round of the day, right? Down here in the 8K range, there's a few chasers that are getting attention, like a Willie Z, a few others like Cam Young, even like Victor Hovland here at -3 that I like getting to. And sure, they're getting a little bit more ownership, but the key difference here is they're not 3 times as owned as everyone else, right? Some of them might be twice as owned as some of the pivots, and I'm still playing a few pivots there in that range as well. But unlike a John Rahm, unlike a Max Homa, right, they're not being owned by a third of the fielder. With John Rahm, right, he's probably going to be 50% plus owned in a lot of the higher dollar contest, single entries, those sort of formats. It's just a little bit of a different thing in this range, right? I'm a little bit more willing to take that chalk. And it's just a lower chalk range, right? You're not talking about 30% ownership. So like Victor Hovland, Cam Young, they are getting quite a bit of attention. Let me give you the exact numbers on those guys too. Just one second, bear with me here. Let's bring up the actual projection sheet here. So Victor Hovland, about 16%. Cameron Young's about 18% owned. Keith Mitchell, I think I mentioned it before, 24% owned, right? So he's the player in that range that I can't sniff. There's no way that I'm getting to. But guys like Sanjay M, if you're looking for a low-owned pivot, I have him at 4.4% right now. Essentially, no one's getting to him. So just like up top, like maybe if you're taking a John Rahm, maybe you're getting to a Max Homa, which, by the way, perfectly fine plays, right? I'm just choosing not to get to them because I really want to scatter shot up top on players I think have that upside. You play one of those two guys, just mix in a Sanjay M, right? Mix in maybe a Tom Kim that's going to be like 10% owned for Sunday Showdown. And you differentiate yourself enough right there to get the job done in a large field contest. So not going to hammer home on that strategy section too much, but wanted to get it out there for anybody that's new to PGA DFS. In this 8K range, I have to say, like Sahith Theegala is going to be relatively chalky, but he's at a really good price range there at $7,900. I have a hard time avoiding that sort of play. You have guys like Seamus Power here. He played wonderfully today, despite, I believe, making a triple bogey at one point. He still shot like 5 under par, which is outrageous. I think he made like 8 birdies on the day. It's highly unlikely that he backs up that kind of performance. So he's relatively straightforward fade. Tiger Woods, I have to think that he's probably a fade for Sunday. He's going to get ownership much like he did today. I mean, we played him in bunches, right? I played 50% Tiger Woods yesterday, right? Told you guys that on stream. He was going to be like my highest owned player. Worked out, obviously went out there, had that eagle there on hole number 1. That was pretty sweet. But for Sunday Showdown, right, when he's going to be like 20% owned, maybe even higher because of the round that he had today, it's just not worth it anymore, right? Especially when, Gary Woodland's another fade. He's another player that's getting a bunch of ownership. I can scatter shot in this range too. So if you're in love with Tiger Woods, you want to play him there on Sunday, I get it. I just think you're a day late, right? You probably wanted to play him today for Showdown, like a lot of us did. But if you want to chase, I guess, by all means, go out there and do so. But don't take him with a John Rahm and a Max Homa, right? 2 other players are going to be 30, 40% owned because you're going to be in so many 3-on-3s with those 3 players. It's going to be outrageous. I mean, in the large field GPP, you might be with 1,000 other entries there just with those three guys. Not an ideal situation to be in if you're trying to win that kind of contest. So keep that in mind with Tiger. I don't want to tell you to fade him, but I'm not playing him. Not playing Gary Woodland either. A few chasers that you could get to. I like the Lee Hodges bounce back. I kind of called it, right? There was no way he was going to sustain that kind of success. Like, I played him at $6,100 this week, just hoping for a top 20. I think I said a top 25, right? It was like the ceiling we were going for. For him to have been in the top 3 after the first 2 rounds was way, way out of my expectations, right? Way higher than his ceiling, to be quite frank. So we knew there was going to be some sort of regression, but because of that today, because he played so poorly, he's not going to be mega chalk for Sunday. In fact, you have guys around him that are now higher owned than him. For example, JJ Spawn down here, just about the same kind of ownership level as a Lee Hodges. Guys like Gary Woodland, higher owned than Lee Hodges now. I mean, even guys like Luke List, Lucas Herbert are kind of getting up there towards Lee Hodges' ownership now because they played fantastic on Saturday, right? Lee Hodges played poorly, right? Shot like 3 over par. Lucas Herbert shot like 4 under par. Luke List shot something like 3-4 under par as well. People would much rather get to those sort of plays. Also, guys that made like 5-6 birdies today than the guy that is seemingly coming in without momentum. But must we forget, Lee Hodges through the first 2 days looked like an absolute killer. I loved him going into the week, so I have even more incentive to go out there and play him because I liked him in a vacuum, right? Coming in, missing 5 straight cuts, I still thought he was a good play because his ball striking numbers were there, right? He was hardly missing cuts for that factor too, right? I believe missed 3 out of his 4 cuts on the number. Just a better player than I think people give him respect for. So I'll be playing those kind of guys. Lucas Herbert, you could definitely play. JJ Spawn. I think JJ Spawn is just a better player than most people realize, particularly a lot of the casual fans. A lot of them didn't see the fall swing, a lot of those top end performances for Spawn. I mean, had that win at the Valero recently on the track record. He's not going to win the event, right? That's pretty obvious there at 6 under par. But if he goes out there and shoots 4 under par, like he's more than capable of doing, that could easily be a top 10 finish. Could even be like a top 6, top 7 finish when it's all said and done. So I like those kind of guys. And sure, he's getting more ownership than, let's say, like an Aaron Rye, but he also has those placement points in play, right? Like, he's not mega chalk, let's say like a McCarthy. McCarthy, after shooting 7 under par, up there in the top 5, is getting a ton of attention. So if you think you're going to be unique or cute getting to a Denny McCarthy, you're not. You can still play him, just you're going to have to pick somewhere else in your lineup to get that leverage, right? It's not going to be Denny McCarthy that's giving you that leverage to the field. I'd say Svensson, he's getting some attention, right? He's in that same ownership range to like a Denny McCarthy. So I actually like Svensson. I am playing him for Sunday Showdown, but if you're using him in a lineup, you have to be careful with who you're pairing him with. Luckily for me, because I'm fading a lot of those top-end chalky players, I can pair these kind of guys with whoever I want up top, right? It's kind of like this 8K range, right? Where I'm taking guys like Hovland, Cam Young, Will Zalatoris, even I'm playing at over 20% ownership because I'm fading those 2 guys up top, right? The guys I'm pairing them with are in the 10K range are going to be some of the lowest owned players on the slate, right? And I know that, right, going into building my lineups, so I can take some more of the chalk down low. That's essentially the idea. Going back down to the 6K range, just pointing out Peter Malnati, he's, I guess, the chalk down low, but nobody down here is really getting that much attention. So down low, if you see anybody that you think could go out there and have a big day, feel free to go out there and implement them. I have my eye on Trey Molnax. He's always an aggressive player. Let's see. Not a ton of guys down here. I didn't play very many guys down here in the 6K range. I know I have Svensson because of his leaderboard position. Also just, he won the RSM Classic, right? So we know he's just a better player than I think the price tag indicates. Sepp Straka, the ball striking has been at least serviceable to this point, and kind of like a Svensson, we know that he's just better than his peers, right? A PGA Tour winner, had the runner-up finish at the FedEx St. Jude. So those sort of players I'm taking shots on down here. Now, your PGA Tour rookies, like Shanks of the world, right, that are like borderline PGA Tour players. Let's see, like an Adam Long, Ben Taylor, like these sort of just lower talent players, like I'm just avoiding. Like even if they're in contention, like even if they're there at like -3, 4, I'm just looking for the higher talent level players, the guys that we see a little bit more often. And it's not just like PGA Tour winners, right? I think that's a good way to identify some of the top players, but like guys that you see consistently making cuts, right? Like Svensson can grind out cuts at this point. He's a better player than most guys on tour. Like Sepp Straka, right? Early in his career, missed a bunch of cuts, but now of late, It's been a little bit better with that. Now, coming into this event, the form wasn't really there, but we played him this week and got away with it. Maybe he makes a run here on Sunday. Here in the 7K range, it's the same kind of thing, right? Just there are guys that are mispriced. They're going to be lower owned than their peers. Use the spreadsheet over there on Patreon, and you're not going to have a hard time making lineups. If you're going to take somebody that's chalky, right, like Tiger Woods, like I was mentioning, just keep in mind all of those things with lineup construction that we talked about. All right, let's go ahead and catch up on chat. We're going to go through lineup construction real quickly when it comes to DFS. Go over like our top cash plays, but then a few things I'm considering when actually building lineups, and then we're going to hop into props. So if you're looking for the prop write-up, that sort of thing, we'll be doing that here shortly. But let's see what's going on down in chat. Where are we at? Jason has a comment about Rory. Let's see what he's got. You're saying that you're seeing him not reading the greens very well? Yeah, it looks like it. On hole number 1, his par 5, he ended up going just over the green he had to lay up on hole number 1, hit a wedge to 6 feet past the hole, and then completely misread the read. It was a left to right breaker. He started it about a foot right of the hole. And as you could guess, right, it moved even further right. And he missed it by like 3-4 feet. Did make the comebacker for par, which is actually impressive. It was one of the harder par putts you could have had on that green. But yeah, something's going on, because to misread a 6-foot putt by like 3 feet is something. I mean, and it's not like he hit it way past the hole. He hit it like a foot past the hole, perfect holding speed like you want to see from players. But he missed it laterally by like 3-4 feet. I mean, that was bad. And I know it's only a 1-hole sample, but like, geez Louise, right? Like, get it together. You've min cashed the last 2 days despite list putting, and now you feel like you have to run him again. He's not going to gain a bunch putting though. That's the issues. If you think he's going to go out there and like gain 2 strokes putting there on Sunday, he's not. Like, him around to neutral is the best that you're going to get from Luke List. Like, he puts like me. Like, down in the Discord, someone actually asked earlier today, like, how I putt. Like, Luke, are you a good putter? Like, is that what you're good at when you golf? And no, I putt like Luke List, and I call myself Luke List, obviously both named Luke, as a detriment to his game. And I think he knows how dog shit of a putter that he is, because of how frustrated you'll see him get out there. I mean, JT today on hole number 1 wouldn't even watch Luke List hit his putt on the exact same line that he was on, I think in fear of watching his putting stroke, because it's that ugly. Mine, it's not really the putting stroke that gets me. I just can't read a green for my life. I have no touch. 3-4 footers are like a 50-50 prospect for me at best. Boy, oh boy, yeah, I empathize with Luke List. I just want to say that much. It sucks to miss all those putts, particularly if you're somebody like Luke List and can ball strike it like that. But I don't know. I wouldn't count on the putter coming back. That's just kind of his thing. You think Tiger is going to go under strokes again? I think he might. Yeah, that was a great prop today. I loved my overexposure on that. Ended up working out this time. On Friday, I played way too much Tiger, but we ran it back there for Saturday and got some of our money back. So I tend to think that he'll probably go under, man, but I'm not expecting like 4 or 5 under par. So I'm going to have to take a look at the line, what we're being offered. I actually haven't taken a look at Prize Picks yet because the board came out just before I went live, but I think he's going to have a decent day. Like, I project him for right about the field average. So the field average is going to be about a 71, and we're getting anything like, let's say like a 72 strokes line or like 72 and a half, then I'd probably be a buyer on that. Actually, let me go ahead and take a peek at the board just to see. Yeah, he's at 72 strokes. Like, I think that's a little bit more fair. I wish he would be like 72 and a half, but yeah, I think that he does more than likely go under. Blitz says, you agree, Jason. Normally you would call this a smash spot for Rory, but he looked clueless on the green. Yeah, I'm just hoping he figures it out. I definitely wouldn't call it a smash spot because, like you said, it's looked so bad to this point, but I've seen some crazy shit happen. Maybe he comes out there with a new putter tomorrow morning and figures it out. Golf's a fickle sport like that. When you least expect it, these guys tend to go out there and figure it out. Svensson is a showdown god, absolutely. One of those guys who either shoots 2 over but has 6 birdies, aggressive as hell, and you love it. Yeah, and he usually either goes like a couple under par, making a bunch of birdies. Sometimes he's over par, making a bunch of birdies, or shoots like an 80. Like, he's an extremely volatile player, aggressive as fuck, and that's what you need for Showdown. So I love it, man. Him, Peter Malnati are kind of like my Showdown gods. Svensson, before he won, was also a lot lower owned. Now he's getting a little bit more attention, which is kind of annoying. He's towards the top of the board now too, so he's also getting a bunch more attention. But like, let me think. Patton Kazire is like one of those guys for me. You go after the guys that have no conscience, that don't care if they make bogeys and bunches, the ones that are just all about those birdies. And normally Peter Malnati, the reason why he does that is he's in like last place. Like he makes the cut, he shoots like an 80 on Saturday, and then on Sunday he has absolutely nothing to lose and shoots like 7 under par. So I love it. I wish that he was being overlooked though. He's starting to get some respect. Darren says, are you still going over the prize picks board later? Absolutely. Yeah, that'll be in about like 5 minutes. We're actually going to hop over to DraftKings now, go through some of the lineup construction. Let's do that. We'll get to prize picks here shortly. Don't worry. And in terms of Showdown, let's go over a few cash plays. So I know the cash guys are hanging around doing their thing. Let's go through the 4 core picks. So it's extremely obvious up top what you need to do. You need to take Jon Rahm and you need to take Max Homa. Now, for salary reasons, this might be a little bit tough to pull off, as now you're down to right around like 72.5 remaining per player. But I think we can make it work. So let's go down. Let's actually just sort this by score. It's probably a little bit easier that way. And find a few values. So like Svensson is like, he's going to be your highest owned value pick when it comes to Showdown tomorrow. So let's put Svensson in there. Let's find like $7,100 spawn. That sounds about right. And you're looking at a cash core here, right? And at $7,600, you could probably even play a Keith Mitchell, right? That would put your last man in at about $6,800. This is the kind of lineup you want to go with. Jam in guys at the top of the board. This is where placement points are key, right? When you're just trying to beat 50% of the field, locking in a bunch of guys at the top of the board makes sense. Now, what I tend to do with these is I tend to try and differentiate with like 2 of my spots. So let's take these 4 as like my, core 4 for this cash lineup here on Sunday. And just to give you an idea, right? Maybe this is where you mix in Meronk, like a relatively low-owned play who's going off early, right? He's in 33rd, right? So he's going to have one of the first tee times of the day. In fact, let's actually just figure out exactly when he's playing. 1 second here. Let me make sure the mic didn't unplug. I bumped it. And anytime I slightly bump the mic, it unplugs, but it looks like we're good to go. Let's figure out when Meronk's playing, because like he'd be the perfect cash play if he's going off super early, right? Let's see, tee times here, round 4. And yeah, he's one of the first groups off, right? So like in a cash lineup, and the reason why I like to differentiate too, right, is to take like 4 spots where, I'm cornering myself with the field, and then take 2 spots where I'm like winning the cash contest, right? 2 guys that I really like that are maybe being a little bit overlooked. Meronk would be a great kind of candidate for that lineup. A little bit cheaper, like Mackenzie Hughes. Like he tears apart these hard courses, and he's also going to be relatively low in play. I prefer him to be closer to the middle of the board. So perhaps we switch it up and we go to like Sepp Straka, who kind of like Meronk is going to be going off on one of the first tee times. Let's see, where's Sepp? Yeah, he's literally the first tee time out there. That's the kind of thing that I envision myself going to. So have at it, right? Figure out what kind of combinations you like for cash. But you should definitely be playing a Jon Rahm and Max Homa in those kind of lineups with 50, maybe even 70% plus ownership in some of those contests. In terms of your GPPs, this is where you get more creative. And because I'm taking a lot of pivots to begin with, I don't really have to think too much when I'm putting together lineups, because if I want to take a chalky player like Zalatoris, I mentioned that before. Maybe it's Cam Young, who I know he's not in the top 10 at this point, but he's still going to get like 15 to 18% ownership. I can take whoever I want up top, right? It could be a Scotty Scheffler, who's going to be like 12% owned, because I'm not taking a 40% owned Rahm, and I'm not taking the 35% owned Max Homa. I have enough leverage right there, even in the 7K range. Like if I want to take somebody who's getting at least some kind of steam, right, like a Sahith Theegala, it's okay. I can make it work. I can swing it in this kind of build. Lee Hodges even, right, towards the top of the board. I can make it work because I have a Scotty Scheffler, right? I have a Cam Young who's, owned, but he's not chalk. And with my last man in, right, this is where you probably want to add at least one more pivot. So maybe you don't take a Svensson in this kind of lineup. Maybe you get to somebody like a Hughes Molinax. even like a little bit cheaper. You could try and leave some salary on the board if you wanted to. And then you round out your GPP lineup that way. So, if I was taking, let's say, a John Rahm and a Max Homa in a GPP lineup, which could be optimal, right? If both of them go off and it's like a duel between Homa and Homa and John Rahm out there, both of them could get to the optimal showdown lineup. It's just that with the rest of your lineup, you're going to have a lot of trouble getting leverage. So down here in the 7K range, a lot of those chalk heavy players might even take like a Gary Woodland in that kind of lineup. They might try and jam in, let's say, like a Svensson there. And now you're at a 4-on-4 with maybe like 500 to 1,000 other entries, right? Where you only have 2 spots to differentiate yourself. It's a tough scene. It's the kind of situation that you want to avoid in large field GPPs. But this is also the kind of build that you want in cash when you're just trying to beat 50% of the field. So when you're building lineups, just have an intention in mind, right? Understand what kind of contest that you're building for. If you're in a single entry, you're in a 2 to 3 max kind of contest, I'm a little bit more willing to take those chalky players because differentiating yourself isn't nearly as difficult. There's just not as many other entries to beat, right? So you don't need as much leverage to move up the leaderboard. It all depends on those kind of factors. So just keep that in mind. I wanted to throw those out there. Let's go over any DFS questions that we've got, and then we're going to get right into props. Let's see, we've got Blake says, how you liking Rory after today's plays? I think that in Showdown, he's going to be super low owned. People are going to write him off. They don't think that Rory's going to be able to go out there and pop there on Sunday. And we know that he's capable, right? Golf, crazy sport. You see funny stuff happen. I mean, last week, right? JT hadn't done anything the entire week and then nearly wins the golf tournament. I mean, at one point, right, the announcers were talking about JT potentially posting a score because of his round on Sunday. And it literally came out of nowhere, right? So, like, Rory could be that guy this week. And it might not be Rory, right? It might be Scotty Scheffler. It might be some other guy, right, in that 3-4 under par range. Maybe it's like a Hovland. Maybe it's a Cam Young right there at 4 under par. Somebody's going to do that again. That's just how it works. So, yeah, I wouldn't write him off. It's easy to hold a grudge. I'll say that, right? When a guy plays like that, just can't make a putt for his life. I mean, we know we can make more putts watching on the couch. It's frustrating, but I would push back and say, try and let it go as quickly as you can because there are edges to be had. I got you with the cash plays, Darren, of course. I don't forget about y'all. Blitz says Hughes actually rates well on Sundays. So yeah, I'm not a huge subscriber to like round 3 stats, round 4 stats, but if they back up the play, even better. Because like the reason why I don't subscribe to them is like, I don't know, like waking up on a Saturday, does that make you feel different than you're waking up on a Friday or something like that? The argument for it is that you have to change your strategy round to round. So like I understand the argument. I'm just not a huge subscriber to it. Good to know though. Nathan says you're trying to pick John Rahm for birdies or better matchup, and you expect Rahm to outperform Young, but you don't know if this means more or less. Okay, yeah, let's hop over there. So new to the matchup board, I understand the confusion. We'll get that confusion ironed out for you. Essentially here, the player pictured, right, is the one that like you're betting on. So with John Rahm versus Cam Young here, right, you think that John Rahm's going to make more birdies than Cam Young, you would want to take the over. Essentially, it's graded on like John Rahm's birdies minus Cameron Young's. So if Cameron Young makes more birdies, that number would be negative. If John Rahm makes more birdies than Cameron Young, then the number would be positive. That's how they end up grading it. So hopefully that helps you out there, Nathan. I am going to try and talk you off the ledge, though. I have to say this. I was going to avoid it, but I'm going to talk you off the ledge. I don't know if I would play that. And again, I don't want to tell you what to do, right? Because that's just not my thing. But Cam Young is an absolute maniac. He's the sort of player that's going to take aim at every single pin. John Rahm is in first place. He has to be conservative, right? He has a 3-shot lead. He is nowhere nearly as incentivized to hit the ball close to the hole. So if anything, I would take the under. I just want to throw that out there. So obviously, if you want to follow your analysis there, take the over, right? That's there on John Rahm. But I wanted to give you that pushback because I kind of like Cam Young there. Damon says, hey, I know you hate birdie or better matchup, but you're 2-0 on those D-tree fades. Yeah, I don't do many fades, or I don't, use birdie or better matchups that often. But when I do, they normally work out for me. So Take that for what it's worth, right? I think maybe that's because I don't play it as much. I have a higher hit rate on the birdie or better matchups, but yeah, they're freaking coin flips, man. Michael says, could that be Merlot or Cabernet? So just like yesterday, this is actually a Crown and Coke. So it's like an optical illusion. It looks like wine. It's in a wine glass, I know. It's just because all of my whiskey glasses, they ended up breaking in the washer. I'm not sure what happened. Like the water pressure was like way too high. I did have them on the bottom rack, which is such a slapdick move on my part. Like, why did I put them on the bottom rack to begin with? Just right, got to be better than that. But yeah, so we're stuck with wine glasses until the new ones come in. And it's not wine, it's a Crown and Coke. How about Day? So yeah, Jason Day for GPPs is a decent play, right? He had an average day, he shot even par, but he made 6 birdies. So I think people may not really recognize the kind of day that he had, right? Pardon the pun there, but they may look at it and go, oh, he had an even par day, just whatever, meh, right? And ownership kind of reflects that. Let me go ahead and double check his ownership number for you there. So 1 second. Let me bring it up here on the other tab. All right. So Jason Day, I have it like 15% ownership. So it's not like he's completely unowned there, Pro Reactor, but compared to some of the other guys around him, like a Victor Hovland, Cam Young, he's a pivot play. So yeah, I like it. I'm not going to be there on it, but I understand it. What's the max amount of salary you would leave on the table? Probably like $800. I think that after about $400, you're not really getting any sort of extra gain by leaving salary on the table. But for Showdown, if you wanted to push that out to like 1,000 or 1,500, I'd be okay with it. Now, it's not something that I typically do, just because I'm trying to take a lot of the quote unquote best plays, right? I want to take those 8, 9K options. So leaving $1,500 on the table essentially insinuates that I'm taking like a 7K guy instead of an 8K guy. And that's just hard for me to do. So I don't put that much on the table. You can if you want to, though. Young tees off an hour earlier too. Love it. Yeah, what's his tee time? Let's check it out. Cam Young. Yeah, he should be towards the middle because he's right -3. Yeah, he's there at 11:49. You got to like that. Like Rory McIlroy, right? He's an 11:38 tee time. Justin Thomas going off early. Victor Hovland. These are all guys that I'm playing. I mean, I'm not playing Tiger Woods, but he's going off early. That should be a good thing for him. But like Sepp Straka, right? Moronk, who I talked about earlier. Steven Yeager. Jason Day is at 11:27. So Pro Reactor, even more reason to go out there and play him. I think that's something to consider. All right, let's see if there's any more questions. We'll go through each category, by the way. So we're going to go through strokes, give you my first reaction. Same thing with birdies or better. Birdie or better matchups, we're going to stick to just questions because I freaking hate that category. But we'll go through greens and regulation as well. GameCube says, not that it matters, but why don't you pull up the underdog tab while you go over it? Do they have an online website? Like, honestly, I only use their app. I feel like a dumbass for never trying to even log into it. Yeah, I probably should. I'll do it here on stream, actually. Damon says, underdog just took half the strokes off the board. Wonder what they're seeing right now. Still no pin locations. I know they were all 0.5 lower than prize picks. Yeah, maybe, but it could have been action-based, I would imagine. Weather-wise, nothing could have really changed it. I don't know. Maybe they're looking at the prize picks board, going to end up matching the board exactly. One thing I've noticed is that over the last maybe 2 events at this point, a lot of the boards have been similar. So I don't know if they're like cooperating, looking at each other's boards and adjusting. That could, of course, be the case, right? It's not like they have to cooperate to do that kind of thing. Yeah, it's interesting. I've noticed that too. And if they're taking stroke stuff off, maybe that's the reason for it. All right, let's go through this board. So in terms of your strokes board, at least when I was looking earlier, it looked kind of similar. From first glance, like a Rory under strokes, I kind of like, because the scoring average, I don't think it's going to be under par again. I think it's going to be more similar to what we saw for the first round, right? Which is right about even par. We have a higher quality of player now that some of the amateurs, some of the lower tier players, guys that weren't in form were cut, right? Aren't there in the final 65 to 70 players. But pin locations are going to be tougher too. So there's compensations in both directions that have to be made. So for some of these elite tier players, I think they might go under strokes. And I think that's kind of the category I'm trying to get to, because over here for birdies are better, 4.5 birdies on these kind of pins is a tough scene. If anything, there's actually a few fades up top that you could take. So in general, I think it kind of looks like a fade board. There again, like kind of guys like Rory that you might want to take an under on, but towards the bottom of the board, especially, a lot of overs I would be considering. So just to give you a few ideas, right? Like a Gary Woodland, it's highly unlikely he continues the form. Harris English at 70 and a half. He's clearly kind of the odd man out when it comes to talent level. Over here with birdies are better. I mean, you could even fade some of these lower tier guys at 3.5 like a Harris English. You could fade Gary Woodland there. He tends to run with a really cold putter. So unless he gets that thing working, he could have trouble getting to 4 birdies. But even the guys at like 4 birdies, like, I don't know. Today, I took a bunch of overs on birdies because of the conditions and more hit than not, right? We ended up having about a 65% hit rate on prize picks, which is decent. It's not great, right? I'm not going to flex about that. I'm used to having a much higher hit rate. Um, but now with harder pins in a similar board when it comes to the pricing, like you'd have to think that more unders are going to hit, right? Because the average went from right around like 3.1 birdies there on Friday to 3.65 there on Saturday. That was with the super easy pin on 10. Again, we don't have the pin sheet yet. It was with an easy pin there on 17. I think you're going to see an average 3.3, 3.2 birdies, right? I think it's going to come back down to earth. And I just think a lot of unders are going to hit, right? I think for strokes, you're going to see a few guys that take it to like 3-4 under par. They're able to keep a clean scorecard out there. But especially when it comes to these lower tier players, I think that the board is priced too low for them for strokes or too high when it comes to their birdie or better marks. So here in a second, we're going to go through and actually put together, like, let's say like a 3-4 man slip. But that's the general idea for the entire board. Going over the greens regulation, they have adjusted it. So the average for round 3 was about 10.8 greens regulation. It was closer to like 10.2, 10.3 for their on Friday. They adjusted for it here. So like before it was like 12.5 for like a Scotty. I think John Rahm was at 12.5. Bottom end of the board, like Tom Kim was like 11.5 for the last round. Guys like Xander were actually at 12 greens regulation. He went way under there with his round 3 performance. So it looks like they've kind of caught on, but even at these kind of rates, I'd be taking unders because the average is, again, below 11 greens. And now we have the hardest pins of the week, and the conditions are just getting firmer and faster as the week goes on. So it's hard to fade a lot of these players. I have to say that because every single player on the board here is an elite tier iron player, right? Somebody that's well better than the PGA Tour average. But just considering the golf course that we're playing out there, I mean, you would be hard pressed to take overs. Let me just say that out there, right? The over rate here is probably going to be like 35%, like maybe even like 30% here for tomorrow. The issue is just picking the right unders because again, you're picking from the cream of the crop iron players. It's just hard to bet against these sort of players. So that's the general idea over there. The birdie or better matchup, a lot of people are going to take this John Rahm over. I would heavily advise against it just because he's playing against a Cameron Young. Let's see if there's any that really stick out, though. At this point, I don't see anything. Maybe the Moronk, right? Maybe the under on Mitchell because he's in contention, might be dealing with some nerves tomorrow, right? Might not be as aggressive because he's up there in the top 3. Moronk, towards the end of the leaderboard, also in one of the first groups off, just a high birdie percentage player to begin with, a top 50 player in the world. So there's maybe a few matchups we can consider. Let's see what else we've got. Woodland versus Malnati, that's like a coin flip. A lot of these are relatively close. The Spawn Lashley is another close one. Yeah, man. I hate this birdie or better matchup board, if I'm going to be frank with you guys. If there's any that you want my opinion on, or maybe one that you think stands out, feel free to go ahead and toss it down in chat and I'll go over it. But nothing that I really want to go out there and force in. Let's see if there's any questions. Then we're going to put together a little slip together for the live stream and then hop on out of here. So if you have any questions, get them in right now. Pretty mild board. Some props you'd like to hear your opinion on are Rory at 4 and underdog, okay, and JT and Morikawa at 12 and 11 greens. So the Rory over and underdog for birdies, yes, I'm with you there. He's going to be aggressive. He's in the top 20 at this point. I think people kind of overblow how he's playing, right? Think that he's probably towards like 40th, 50th at this point. He's still up there in the top 20. So I think he's going to be engaged. I'd like the over there if that's the one that you're leaning towards. And then with JT and Morikawa, I mean, Morikawa at 11 greens, that's actually like maybe the one over that I would consider. But yeah, JT at 12, I would take the under on. I know he went under the first 2 days. I'm not sure what he did here on Saturday. Let me go ahead and double check that right now. But yeah, the Morikawa one is actually, I think it's about an appropriate projection for Morikawa. But if JT didn't do anything crazy today on the greens, you'd have to think that he's a solid under. Let me bring him up here, though. Let's not do any speculating. So Justin Thomas, right, shot 2 under par, completely brought it back on the back nine. Ended up hitting 10 out of 18 greens. So yeah, that's 0 for 3 on going over greens regulation. In round 2, he hit 9. In round 1, he hit 7 greens. So he made it through the cut, right? He had a decent day today, and he hasn't gone over his prop. That's definitely a really solid over. Let me check Morikawa. I would have to think that he's gone over to this point, his 11 line, probably even multiple times. So in round 1, he hit 13, he went over. In round 2, he hit 11, he tied. And then in round 3, he hit 7. Yeah, so honestly, I would lean over on Morikawa there. I would still take the under on JT, right? Who's gone under all 3 rounds. Also curious on your thoughts on the 5 birdie or better line at underdog. Yeah, I'd take the under there. That's a really good fade, actually, right? Getting to 6 birdies is asking a lot. And you're saying, yeah, that's crazy for a Sunday 3-stroke leader. Even if it's Jon Rahm, completely agree. Sharp take. And I'm going to go over there and hammer that prop after we get off stream. Damon says, definitely messed up your former and latter listing for greens regulation. Okay, so it's the other way around. Good point. So it makes more sense with the projections. Oh, dang it. So that changes that up quite a bit, right? So with JT under 11, I wish he was at 11 and a half. But yeah, I would lean the under there. He's still gone under all 3 rounds. So the same thing holds up there. And then with the Morikawa at 12, I would lean under. So I wouldn't be taking the over anymore. So yeah, that's worth noting. Good catch on that. You like Moronk a lot. They priced him up a little, so they might keep him from being chalk. Yeah, let me check on his ownership for you. So 1 second. I'll bring up my Showdown sheet again. Again, if you're looking for all of my actual Showdown projections, player pull, all of that, it is posted on the Patreon page. But let me see. Moronk. Yeah, so you're spot on. He's 5% owned. It's mild. You play him in 10% of lineups and you get that leverage. I love it. And you said, any thought on Willett? Let me check on his ownership too. So Danny Willett at -5. So he's on the border of like the top 10. Actually, I think it might even be like in the top 10 at this point, and is 8.9% owned. I'm playing Danny Willett. I'm getting there. He's a decent course fit. I liked him going into the week too. He was one of those sleeper picks that I talked about there on the Wednesday live stream. And yeah, like 8.9% ownership that he's at, that's nothing, right? That's playing at 15% of your lineups, maybe 20% if you're feeling frisky, and you get your leverage that way. I think that's a sharp play. All right, let's make this prize pick slip together and then hop on out of here. So a few props in underdog, I actually like a little bit more. So we might focus on that side a little bit more. But over here on prize picks, I think it's got to be fades. You can see they actually already bumped Harris English to 71 strokes, but like a Gary Woodland over on strokes. You could also take his under over here for birdies or better. Both of those make enough sense for me. But because we're looking at a course I think is going to play over par, I think you're going to have the Sunday nerves with Gary Woodland. I'm going to take his over strokes there. Let's find another fade. I want to mix in another over here towards the bottom of the board. You can see they already bumped up Kuchar, so I think they're listening to the live stream. Hi, lines makers. What's going on? You guys obviously don't have much to do this Saturday evening either, so that's why you're here on the stream. I get it. Is what it is. Let's see what else is going on. Over here with greens regulation, right? This is where we can try and find one of these fades, right? I mentioned like the whole board. You can lean on unders. JT, I know David pointed him out before. He would be a decent fade spot here. If you want to continue to fade Rory, right? You think that he's going to have another poor Sunday. Wouldn't hate the under in greens regulation. I'd more than understand the play, especially considering the momentum coming in here. But let's find one. I mean, it's so tough given how good all these players are with their irons. But yeah, let's just take Rory McIlroy. Like from the stat perspective, right? From like the analytics, like he's probably the least likely to go over there. So let's go ahead and take him. And let's try and find a few supportive stances. So I kind of wanted to take Rory for the under there, but let's avoid that. Let's try and find one that might be a little bit more consistent. Scotty Scheffler under 69 strokes. Given how solid he is around the green, he's one of the few players that I don't think will have as much trouble with the tough pin locations. He's also got one of the higher ball flights on the PGA Tour, can really launch it up there. So if you have some of those tucked pins, which I'm expecting that we're going to have, he's going to be able to access them. Let me go ahead and actually check out the pin locations. Let me make sure I didn't unplug my mic. I bumped it again, so one of these points is going to happen. Did they end up posting the pins? They did not. They're really slacking on that end. Come on, boys. We have bets to be made. But even if we get the really difficult pin locations, Scotty Scheffler has the sort of game to handle it. Let's make this a 4-man slip. Let's find one more. Let's go to birdies are better. I don't hate the guys at 4 because you get that push equity, but maybe a strokes prop. We could take JT at 69, but kind of like with Rory, he's got the bad form coming in. I'm not sure if I'm so sold on it. At 70 strokes, you have guys like Tony Finau, Xander Schauffele. Now, their form isn't great, but now we're getting them at 70 strokes, right? So they're obviously a tie at just 1 under par. Up here towards the top end of the board, I mean, we could even take another fade and just make it 3 fades and 1 under, which honestly, from like the plus EV perspective, I think that's it. So this is the card we're going to go with here. The idea here is that we have more fades than supportive stances. And because we do have the 1 supportive stance, we're getting the normal payout, right? So we're still getting a 10x for a power play. You can go with the 5x flex play if you wanted to go that direction. But this kind of card is how I envision making a lot of my cards. Taking fades towards the bottom half of things. I mean, there's no reason that Keith Mitchell should be projected better than Tom Kim, Xander Schauffele, Tony Finau, those sort of players. I don't care if he's playing well this week. He's just clearly not on that same sort of talent level. In mixing in these kind of cards. Let's say you think that Rory has that bounce back day. Maybe you go with this kind of slip. And because I think the unders might be a little bit hard to come by, maybe you mix it up, right? Maybe you take the Rory McIlroy instead of a Scotty Scheffler under, or even up here, like a Xander under, right? They're at 70 strokes. I would be a little bit more hesitant to be entering any of these like unders on strokes, but just like hammer the overs, right? And I'm not just talking about Gary Woodland and Keith Mitchell over. I mean, like any of them, like even Kuchar at 71 strokes. Let's see. Harris English at 71 strokes, even after the bump. Like I think you could take the over on. Over here for birdies are better, but you haven't seen any bumps, right? Like an under on Matt Kuchar, right? An under for Gary Woodland, so on and so forth. Under for Harris English. You're going to see tough conditions. The birdie or better average is going to be like 3.1. These sort of players are about your average for the field. So clearly, I would say more unders are going to hit than overs. So that would be how I would attack this slate. Let's see if there's any questions. And if they're not, we're going to hop on out of here. So if you have anything, get it down in chat right now. If not, I appreciate everybody that stopped on by. Hit that like button on the way out of here. Also, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already so you don't miss any of the content in the future. I've got the Honda next week. I'll be there on site all week. It'll be hype. There'll be a video out tomorrow for the course breakdown. I'll be there on site on Tuesday and Wednesday with some content. It's going to be hype. But like I said, let's go over some questions. If you have any, get them down in chat right now. BJH says, we already went over that actually. My bad. GameCube says, if you go low on Rom at 5.5 birdies and he hits at 5, is it a push or a loss? It's a push. That's correct. Yeah, these pins take way too long. Just need to see 10 and 17. Yeah, 10 and 17 are the key ones. I would say the par 3s in general are also a little bit dicey. For Sunday pins, also the par 5s tend to be some pretty tricky pins. So I'm going to have my eye on, I think it's like, what was it, like hole 3 and 13, or sorry, 3 and 11. The other par 5s. Sorry. We're gonna have to take a look at 11 and hole number 1. Both of those could be some pretty tricky pins too. What about that Tiger prop again? Yeah, so at the beginning, I was talking about the strokes a little bit. They're at 72 strokes. I wish it was at 72.5. Like if he was, He shoots 1 over par. He ends up hitting for us. That'd be great. But now he's got to shoot even par or better with some of those tough pins. I see all of the avenues for him to go out there and not succeed. So I'm probably going to stay away from his like supportive stances. Like I just, because of how tough the pins are likely to be, again, we haven't seen them yet. So I'm a little bit hesitant to enter cards right now. Maybe wait on those. If the pins aren't so bad, then I'm more okay with the Tiger props. Blitz says, thanks, buddy, of course. Best of luck, man. Hopefully you go out there and hopefully one of us takes down a GPP. That'd be pretty damn sweet. Trent says, hey, Luke, great job as always. What's your top 4 props? So yeah, the ones that I just went over, they're on stream. The ones that actually clicked in. So it'd be like the over on somebody like, who was it? Gary Woodland strokes. The under on like Matt Kuchar. Birdies are better. Like those are some of my favorite props. Over on Keith Mitchell strokes. In the one under I had was Scotty Scheffler on strokes, but I wouldn't classify that as one of my top 4 props. In general, I'm mostly looking at fades on the board. And this is just, again, assuming that the pin locations are going to be a little bit more difficult. So I would hold off until they post them. I would imagine they're going to post those pin locations probably in the next like half an hour, right? They did last night. So hopefully they get on that here soon. And we can get an idea of how those are going to work out. But I imagine it's going to be difficult, and there's going to be a lot of fades to be taken. That's all I've got, boys. That's all for the round 4 stream. Gonna get into the prop write-up. Hopefully they post those pins so I can get that done. But looking forward to next week. It's my favorite week of golf of the year. The field isn't the best, right? If you're new to golf, you're looking for Tiger Woods, Scotty Scheffler, Rory McIlroy in the field, next week isn't going to be your thing. I'll preface it with that. But if you're a golf hardcore fan, right, you know all of the players, right? You like those 6 and 7K range golfers, it's going to be a fun one because the course is an absolute, it's just freaking crazy. I was going to call it a fuck fest, which probably isn't the best word for it, but it feels like it. It's just absolutely ridiculous. There's water in every hole. There's like 30, 40 mile an hour winds. The cut line's normally like well over par, like 3-4 over par. And sometimes the winning score is like 3 under par. I mean, we've seen borderline over par scores win the Honda Classic before. So I'm thoroughly looking forward to this event, particularly because it's my hometown event. I'll be there on site. So look forward to all the content. Going to be some extra content out this week because I'll be on site and all of that. Still going to be doing our Showdown live streams next week, but might be a little extra lubricated up for that when it comes to the alcohol. So it'll be interesting. We'll say that much. There'll be some fun live streams next week. But me and the boys will be hitting up the course every single day. We have an all-inclusive drink and food package. So we intend to take full advantage of it. So looking forward to it, guys. Best of luck to everybody out there. I'm really looking forward to the week, and let's get this cash.